All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Andre. I'm a part of Cure OGT Patient Family Foundation, and today we're having a special guest for our community call, Mike Graglia. Mike Graglia is the CEO and founder and a co-founder of SynGAP Research Fund, and he has been leading this organization for 5+ years. And before that, Mike was in BCG and also places like Emerson Collective. So he has been touching the biopharma world extensively, and currently Mike is full-time doing this work. I've heard Mike when I was on rare boot camp from Ultragenics, and Mike gave a very inspiring talk about the parent foundation that he's running on how to run things properly. And I wanted to have a personal time with Mike to ask questions that we all have as parents here in Cure OGT on how to better focus our energy and what to do first, second, and third in our very small patient foundation. So Mike, hi, and I'm super excited to have you here, and thank you for joining us.
Sure. I appreciate the invitation. And you just sent me an email after we met through the Rare Boot Camp, which I would encourage any rare disease group like you did to go to. And you asked me a few questions, so I'm happy to talk about those questions, and then we can jump in. Conscious this is being recorded, so I'm going to try to behave. We'll see how that works. But
yeah,
it's all good. It's all good. We can always edit stuff out if I say stuff I regret.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have we can always edit it out, and I can share it back with you just for kind of to make sure we're.
You really asked me like three questions. Like your two big questions were, what kind of investments have you made would have the best return on investment, and any fundraising gems, and then you said any other tips like negotiation or whatever. So let me just talk quickly to that. And since it's just the three of us right now, please interrupt me as you see fit. I spent not enough time on your website trying to understand the disease. I understand it's X-linked. I understand that it's an essential protein, it's vital, necessary for life. So all of your mutants are missense, which is a little different than SynGAP. SynGAP is a haploinsufficiency. So two functional copies, your normal, one functional copy of disease, two broken copies, you're dead, right? Similar to yours. So all our patients have one functional copy. So the methods of rescue are very different. And in our community, the patients with missense mutants have a highly variable phenotype. Some of them are pretty high functioning and some of them are not. And so we have spent a good amount of work and time and effort on the missense. So I'll come back to that. The fact that you have specific mutants. So let me go through these three buckets: return on investment, fundraising, and other. If the question is, what have you done that has the highest return on investment? My answer for everybody at every stage is iPSC cell lines, right? And I guess before I would say that, I would say learn from others, which you are clearly doing, having gone to the boot camp. I don't know if you guys are members of these umbrella groups. There's a lot of umbrella groups. You could spend your whole day going to umbrella group meetings. The ones that I think are actually useful are Combined Brain, Global Genes, and then Every Life Foundation for policy and advocacy. But frankly, policy and advocacy is you guys are too small, and it's too early for you to think about policy and advocacy. I think being a member of Combined Brain is your highest priority if you're not already, and then take part in Global Genes. Everything else is just going to take a lot of time and energy. And I should say, the Rare Epilepsy Network, which you guys really don't have a strong epilepsy phenotype, so that's not a great fit. I would focus on and I will also mention that Global Genes includes RareX, which is occasionally helpful as well. So the most important thing for small groups is to leverage what other people have done. And I think you're well on track to doing that. And I would make sure that you prioritize joining Combined Brain and Global Genes. The other thing I would make sure you do, given that you're X-linked, is make sure you are tracking, the other X-linked diseases, which I think is Rett and Angelman. Is that correct? Are those both X-linked?
Yeah, we haven't checked that out yet.
UBA3 is no, actually Angelman is not. Angelman is similar. It's like a silenced copy and a not silenced copy. I don't know if it's X-linked. Rett, I think, is X-linked. And the Rett Syndrome Research Trust, RSRT, is a force. And honestly, like, you probably want to, one of your families should probably go to their conference and really just learn from them, because they're one of the people I copy and learn from, right? So definitely none of us have time to waste. So learning from others and feeling free to find rare disease groups that you want to look like one day and going to their conferences is very smart, right? Don't sit at home. You have to go to conferences and you have to connect with people. Having said that, so return on investment, learning from others, right? Once you give a grant, the grant is given. So until you're sure a grant is a good idea or the potential return is high enough, don't give the grants. Do spend your money on letting people know what OGT is, letting people connecting with other leaders and learning what's happening out there, because there's a lot going on. The thing that I have found is like the cheapest and the best bang for the buck is making iPSC cell lines, and making iPSC cell lines in a place where you control them. So what will happen is you will meet a researcher. They will say, I want to help you. Maybe you give them a grant. Maybe they don't. They get some blood or some skin from one of your patients and they make a cell line. And you're like, wonderful, my patient has a cell line. That cell line is stuck in a university. And if that researcher has good chemistry with another researcher at another university, and if they're really friends, they might share the cell line, if their lawyers let them. But when a company comes along that has a therapy for your kid, and you say to that university, hey, please share the cell line, their lawyers will say something stupid like, well, this is our intellectual property. It's not intellectual property. It's a commodity. It's a cell line. And therefore, if we give the cell line to this company owes us anything that comes out of that. And of course, the company's going to test the technology that is their intellectual property, and they're going to say no. So my point is, the time and money you spend making cell lines in universities is a very low return on investment because it's stuck in that university, worst case scenario. It's stuck in the academy, broadly, best case scenario. But getting it to a company is going to be damn near impossible. And so I strongly encourage everybody to not pay academics to make cell lines, even though the academic will have some line that's like, well, not all cell lines are created the same, and I make the best cell lines because I trained in this prestigious place under this genius person, so my cell lines are the best. It's all bullshit. Get a cell line made at a CRO, contract research organization. Make sure you own the cell lines and that those cell lines can be given freely to any company and any academic, anytime, anywhere on earth. That is my strongest advice. The price tag is around $10,000 a pop. It's not cheap, but it's not expensive.
No, it's not expensive. Is it for one cell? Because we have like multiple variants. So and multiple.
Yeah, so you would want to do it.
Backgrounds.
You would want to identify. So the official scientific answer is you would want to identify the most prevalent cell lines in your community and make as many of those as you can afford. The reality is, if we get to fundraising, you're going to want to go to the families who can write a $10,000 check without blinking and say, you want to make a line for your kid. And you want to, and you know what? That's fine. That's how, at the end of the day, it's a small group of families. It's 80-20. 80% of your money is going to come from 20% of your families. Those families are going to want their kids to have a cell line in the mix. Let them. And I will, and you know, but this involves quickly identifying a CRO, negotiating with the CRO, dealing with where the cell lines live. Important facts for cell lines that are immortal. But once they're made, you can turn one cell line, you can make more cell lines. That cells divide, right? So, and they're the S in iPSC is a stem cell. So you can have one iPSC turn into 2, turn into 4, turn into 8, etc. So once you make a cell line, you can give them away forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, as long as they're living in a biobank that costs a couple cents per line per month. All of that requires contracts and governance. It's a lot of work for a groups like ours, but Combined Brain which houses over 100 rare disease groups, has a contract with a biobank and lets groups like ours work with them at cost. So the process here is join Combined Brain, work with Combined Brain, start making cell lines like crazy. Why are cell lines so important? And I'm coming from a disease that is presumed to mainly be in the brain. And you have a disease that is ID. So while your gene is all over the body, it's the brain is really your focus, right?
Sure.
So the answer is we can't biopsy the brain. If we had a skin disorder or bone disorder or liver, we just biopsy the relevant cell type and study it. We can't biopsy our kids' brains. So what we have to do is make an iPSC, a stem cell, and then tell that stem cell to turn into a neuron, right? And the way you do that is you take blood or skin from a kid, you use some science to put evolution in reverse. You tell that blood or skin cell to turn back into a stem cell, which is where they came from. All cells came from stem cells. You let those stem cells live in the biobank. And then when a researcher or a company needs to test them, they take those stem cells and they turn them into neurons, right? And then one day turns out your disease affects the heart or the liver or the whatever, or the gut. Turn them into those kinds of cells. So stem cells really are a powerful and necessary thing. Costs about 10 grand, takes about 6 months to go from skin and blood back into a stem cell. So if you don't have those stem cells sitting on the shelf, when you find a researcher or a company who cares about your disease, they're going to waste 6 months making stem cells if you haven't already done it. So make the stem cells for as many lines as possible. And if your child, and if you're a family who can raise $10,000, or maybe it's 12 now, I don't know. It's right around that neighborhood. Just make stem cells. So, and then that, is sort of part of the broader idea of shareable assets. When you think about what we're doing and the amount of money we can raise, it's pocket change in the world that we're in. So we really have to spend money on things that are going to have a huge return on investment. I think stem cells are the entry level there, but other shareable assets, at some point you may or may not want a mouse model or another mouse model. What I can tell you right now is that humanized mouse models are becoming very cool. So what that means is when you work on a mouse and the gene in the mouse, you're working on the mouse version of that gene. And a mouse version of your gene and a human version of your gene are going to be like 98% the same. Mm-hmm. Which for science until recently was good enough. But now that we're starting to talk about genetic therapies, precision therapies, you may need to work on the human gene, because we're really getting into the genetic machinery. So the way that works is you take a mouse and you CRISPR out the mouse gene and you CRISPR in the human gene. And then you have a mouse running around that actually has the human gene in it. So when you start creating medicines that affect the human gene, your mouse exists. So if your question is, what other shareable asset should we as a foundation consider? Answer, humanized mouse. Now, here's the punchline on the humanized mouse. Making a mouse is like 50, 60 grand. Great company in Australia called Ozgene, very, very handy. Seems like a manageable amount of money. That mouse is useless until you characterize the mouse. What does that mean is, okay, here's a mouse with whatever gene. Actually, for humanized, this might be less true. I have to think about that. At that point, you may want to let an academic do some work to basically describe this mouse in the literature, because the mouse is one thing. The next thing is like, how does the mouse behave if I rescue the mouse? But now I'm getting ahead of myself. So we have to do high return on investment things, shareable assets. The most accessible and important is iPSCs, induced pluripotent stem cells. The other thing I would say on return on investment for us has been drug repurposing. I've worked with Transcripta Bio, which cost us about $1 million. I've worked with Clement Chow, which cost us about $100,000, and I've worked with Unravel Biosciences, which cost us more like low 5 figures, and they all found information for us. So I would not ignore drug repurposing under the simple insight that if you find a repurposable drug, it could help your kids the day after you identify it. As long as it's a safe drug, put it in the kid, right? You already have a molecule on your website. But, these genetic therapies are going to take years and years and years to get approved. So I think for a small foundation with limited resources, starting with the most affordable drug repurposing effort out there, which at quality effort, which I think is Unravel Biosciences, is a smart move.
Unravel, is that a company?
Yeah, it's Unravel Biosciences. I can put you in touch with the CEO. He's a great guy. The other thing, if you haven't studied it, if you go to my website, somewhere on my website, I don't know where actually, there's a thing called, we have a program called SMARTT, which is SynGAP, missense, something or other. And basically, the problem with missense mutants, and you guys, I'm sure, know this, is that the problem with missense mutants is that every missense mutant is basically a little bit different, right? And we need to figure out what this missense is doing versus what that missense is doing. Because every missense is misfolded potentially in a different way. So it's not fair to assume if you have 3 patients with different missense mutations that they're all going to be the same. In fact, they're all going to be very different. And you need to spend some energy figuring those out, which you can do with bioinformatics. So you can model this. Go ahead.
Just a second to jump in here. Actually, this is the critical problem that we're seeing right now with our academics world right now, because they see that all different variants are very different in terms of, not very, but different in terms of like characterization. Yeah. And they're all saying that, hey, Andre, and everyone here, we cannot get to the next phase, which is finding a treatment, because we don't know the underlying principle. And the more we look, we see that the more we see that there is some like difference even between the catalytic and TPR domains. Even within each domains, there are differences. And we're trying to get to understand the underlying principle. Without that, Andre, we cannot get to solving this problem. So don't push us. Like, I'm not pushing, but it's just kind of don't expect us to move as fast as you'd like to move. So just wanted to bring that. I hear you about this missense variants being different.
So I just shared in the chat the SynGAP missense server. So what we did is we gave a grant to a team in Finland who built a model that pulls up all our known missense variants and models them. It pulls on AlphaFold, it pulls on other databases, it compares all the results, and it does its own modeling to predict the impact. And essentially what I would say is, I mean, if I've done it, I believe that it's the best we can do for now. That's the kind of effort you need, right? And that, again, is it's a resource you could go to right now, and you could look through our missense variants and you could study them, and so could any researcher and any postdoc. So what we're trying to do here is make it easier for people to study and understand the differences between missense mutants, because this is a major. If you're writing a strategy document and you're identifying major challenges for your group, this is one of them, right? How the heck are we going to understand all these different missense mutants? But the answer to that researcher who is buying time with that pitch is, okay, I get it. Let's pick 4 or 5 mutants that are, have certain phenotypes. This one's severe, this one's average, this one's not severe, this one's whatever. And let's just double click on these for now. But let's do that at the genotypic and the phenotypic level. Genotypic meaning, let's understand what's going on in the gene, right? So in other words, is this missense mutant replacing an amino acid that is hydrophobic with one that is hydrophilic, meaning this molecule loves water, this molecule hates water. So it's basically a very different amino acid. And as a result, we've totally changed what's going on. Versus this missense is replacing one that is whatever with something that's pretty similar. And so we would expect that missense to maybe be less of a big deal. And really it's going to have to be like that at first. Let's identify 3 to 5 missense mutants and really study the heck out of them. And then let's wait for technology and modeling and in silico, right? So this is in vitro, in silico, and in vivo. In vitro is in the dish, in the glass. In silico is in the silicone in a computer. And in vivo is in a living creature. So as compute accelerates, we could do more and more in silico work. But let's start by really understanding in vitro, in the glass, what a few different missense mutants are like. And by the way, to do that, you need cell lines, right? So if you don't have a lot of cell lines, identify 3 to 5, start with those, study the hell out of them, and then wait for that knowledge to become extensible, right? Hopefully you don't need to make 60 cell lines, but maybe you do. The one thing I will say that I figured out too late and I invested in too late was that clinicians are harder to get a hold of than researchers and more expensive to deal with. So we spent years building a great team of researchers and giving a lot of people a lot of money and doing all kinds of work. And then as the clinic approached, we realized we needed to work with clinicians, and their dance cards are full. These guys are busy. There's a lot of sick kids out there, right? And they and their institutions are super busy. So I can tell from your website you've got a list of some great researchers, but I would encourage you to figure out who the top 3 or 4 clinicians on earth are. Well, 2 things. Figure out who the thought leader clinicians are. Like if and when there's going to be a clinical trial, who are companies going to call? And by the way, the company's going to ask you that question. So you need to know these people. You need to have them on speed dial. You need to know that they know who you are. That they need to know that you know who they are. They need to understand that when it's go time, companies are going to work with you and that they're going to want your recommendation.
We have the name. We have the name. Yeah. I have the name. Yeah.
But go from the names to the relationships, like invest in those relationships. And at the same time, start building a database now of every clinician who's ever seen one of your kids.
Oh.
Every doctor. Because you're going to have someone diagnosed in Timbuktu or in Omaha or in wherever. And they're going to call you and say, who's a doctor near me? And it's weird, but that's actually a hard question. And then you go to Facebook groups, anyone in Omaha, whatever. It's too much work. Like find a way to start systematically collecting from your families. Who is your neurologist? Who are your top 3 doctors? Don't ask for all their doctors because that's too much work. Who are your top 3 doctors? And have someone curating that list. And you're going to suddenly see, oh, wow, 5 people are seeing the same doctor. We need to talk to them, right? Like that's the return on investment is going to feel low, but you need the clinicians. And as you get closer to trials, and certainly, let's say you find a repurposed drug. Let's say Clement Shower Unravel say, hey, this drug is almost certain to help your kids, but you need a prescription. Who's going to write a prescription? A clinician. What happens when you call a clinician from Stanford or Harvard or wherever and say, please write a prescription based on some research you've never heard of? They're going to say, no way, someone could die. They're going to freak out because the downside for them is huge. What if I write a drug prescription and something goes wrong? I look like an idiot. What if something goes right? No one's really going to care.
Yeah.
So they're going to focus on the risk, not the benefit to your child.
Totally.
And what you really need to do is have clinicians on your team, know your kids' names, want to work with you, because when it comes time to treat kids, the researchers are in the back seat and the clinicians are driving. So the thing I did too late was really invest in clinician relationships. And by the way, if you think researchers are hard to deal with, clinicians are worse. I love all my clinical colleagues, but they all have strong personalities or they wouldn't be doing this kind of work.
And they're busy.
So,
right.
It's, start investing early on in understanding your clinical network and having a good relationship with them.
Makes
and
sense.
Understanding who is really cares and who's just going to be difficult no matter what. There is at least one clinician I can tell you right now, no matter what idea I take to them, they're going to shit on it rampantly. Like it doesn't matter if it's a good idea, a bad idea, something they know, something they don't. They're just going to tell you everything that's wrong every time. So I'm not going to go to that person with new ideas, right?
Yeah.
And you need to know that before you're in a hurry, because the way this work is, you work. It feels like Sisyphus. You're rolling the boulder uphill. You get nowhere. And you're like, why am I doing this? I should just be hanging out with my kid.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all that work starts paying off and doors start opening and things start happening. And you're like, oh my gosh. And when that happens, I'm telling you, you're going to need to know who your best clinicians are. So what's high return on investment? Clinicians. The other thing I'll say is Ciitizen. Collecting data so Ciitizen falls under the rubric of natural history study. Natural history study is understanding how the progression of disease. You can do a retrospective, looking back natural history study. You can do a prospective, looking forward. Prospective natural history studies are stupidly expensive, if I'm polite. Right? It is incredible how much money these things cost. Now, that's how all your clinicians are going to tell you that's the most important thing, and they're going to push you to do one. And then they're going to volunteer to take your money. But it's incredibly expensive. A retrospective natural history study, the kind of which Ciitizen will do with you for not very much money, if anything, has a huge amount of data to offer and is a no-brainer. So if you're not already working with Ciitizen and you're not begging every family who has access to Ciitizen to use it, that's high return on investment. Yeah.
Mike, I have a question here. Looks like we have natural history study going on and led by one of the research teams.
Yep.
Why do we need Ciitizen as a, like, to me, it looks like a duplication. If Marie, like the lady who Elise mentioned earlier, she's already doing natural history study, so asking you to provide some documents and stuff, like, so yeah, what's the difference?
It's not a duplication at all. She's doing a prospective one. And even if she's collecting documents and looking over histories, that's humans doing the work, right? And humans all have biases and all make mistakes and whatever. Ciitizen, every patient who's at least, how many US patients do you have?
Well, around like 15, maybe like the 20. Yeah.
Let's say we get 10 of them in Ciitizen. In 30 days, Ciitizen is going to hoover up every single medical record that they've got in the US. Right. And by the way, the institutions only have to keep those medical records for 7 years. So as soon as a kid is older than 7, you might start losing records.
Okay.
But if you get people in Ciitizen, they can start hoovering up those records. And if you've got, and then the patient can log into Ciitizen and look at those records and have them all in one place. But at some point, what they do is they have a system for collecting the records, which they'll do in 30 days. They have a system for scanning all those records and pulling the data into their computers. And then they have a team of genetic counselors working with more computers who systematize all that data and put it in one place. That's a really valuable data set of 10 years of the past, right? And that can look back as long as the patient is alive if the records are available. I'm sure the researcher you have is doing great work looking forward, but they're different speeds. Now, she's going to have deeper data and more insight into the data. So it's a quality quantity trade-off, but you want both, right? And if you find something in one of those data sets, it can then be interrogated in the other data set to validate it. So I instead of thinking of redundancy, I would think of it as complementary. And Ciitizen's dirt cheap, because their game is collect the data, let you use it, and then one day when industry comes along and wants that data, let industry pay them for it. And industry is going to happily pay them for it because it's going to be an order of magnitude cheaper than doing it themselves, right?
Makes sense. So this is their business model, right? So they're selling it to industry. Okay.
Yeah, licensing it to industry with the patient's consent. They also share some of that revenue with the patients themselves and the PAGs. So I 100% endorse Ciitizen, one of the best decisions I ever made, really valuable data. And personally, I use Ciitizen. I log in and I ask Ciitizen, there's a little chatbot on there, give me a list of all the drugs my kids are on. And it does. And then I compare that to the drugs my kids are really on. And I'm like, okay, this is where the medical record is wrong. Give me a list of all my kids' ICD-10 codes. When was my son diagnosed with autism? What is, all of this stuff, it can just pull out of the records if it has them.
Nice.
It's a really powerful tool. And then the other thing, I'll skip that. That's low return on investment. So that's what I would put for return on investment. Shareable assets, in silico work, and natural history data, right? Really, you guys are missense mutations. I would identify a handful of missense mutants, and I would say this is our starting cohort, and I would engage your researchers on that, and I would push those forward. As far as fundraising, Andre, you said you listened to my podcast. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but if you go back to my early podcasts, it was just me, 5 years younger, probably like 20 pounds heavier because this was before GLP-1s. And I was just sitting there being like, this is what I'm working on this week. And every week I did this, and I'll tell you why I did it. We were trying to recruit people into Ciitizen, and I would come home and I'd be frustrated. I'd be like, I complain to my wife. I say, people aren't signing up for Ciitizen. I don't understand what they don't understand. And my wife was like, well, you're kind of a jerk. People think you're a jerk. No, people don't like being told what to do. Takes a while to get to know you. You should do a video so people can realize you care. And I was like, all right. So I started Googling videos. I realized there's video podcasts. I said, I'm going to do a video podcast. My entire board freaks out. They're like, this is the worst idea you've ever had. Do not do a video podcast. You're going to piss everyone off. I was like, look, if it sucks, we'll take it down. Let's just try it. And you know what I learned doing this podcast? There's a handful of patients like you guys who are like, my kid's sick, what can I do? And you run to the fire. Most parents, my kid's sick, I'm tired, I'm depressed, I'm scared, I don't know what the hell's going on, and they sit at home. And they're hanging on by a thread. And there's really, they have very little energy to spend, and they're not going to raise their hand. They're not going to talk to you until they get therapy and antidepressants and better help. They're not going to do much. But you know what they will do? Because it's so damn easy. They will listen to a podcast about their kid's disease. So what I've realized is that by sending out this signal into the void every week, this is what I worked on this week. I had a meeting with Mike. I joined Combined Brain. I went to this conference. I learned about missense. Do you know what a missense is? Explaining the difference between missense and PTV. You know, just 10 minutes of content weekly is cake. You can do it hungover, right? And then you put that out there and two things happen. The people who are watching you are going to start learning and building confidence in you. And guess what? The family who's not going to get diagnosed until 2026, they don't have to call you and ask you 37 stupid questions that you've answered 100 times each. They just have to listen to your podcast.
Yeah. Because
you've already answered them, right? As soon as I get the same question twice in a week, I talk about it in the next podcast. Because if 2 people have hit me with the question, I know there's 10 people thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then I put it out as a podcast. And then here's the other thing. We're all doing this so that there's drugs for our kids. One day there's going to be a drug for your kids, and you're going to want people to be in a clinical trial. You can call them up and you can say, hi, I'm Andre, or I'm Elise. I work with the foundation. I've heard of the foundation, but I don't know who you are. You want me to take my kid and travel to where to put this what from this company I've never heard of? Is it safe? They're not going to do it. But if they have been watching on their phone as they're waiting in the therapy appointment, as they're driving on their vacation, as they're up at night sleeping next to their kid who can't sleep with their phone, bored out of their mind, if they've been watching you talk to them about this disease for the past 1, 2, 3, 10 years, they're going to know what you look like. They're going to know that you give a damn, and they're going to know that you know what you're talking about. And if you say, hey, it's really important that your kid is in this trial, they're going to say, okay. So I started with fundraising, and now I'm talking about a podcast and trust. But at the end of the day, the only people who give a damn about your disease are people with your disease. And you don't get money out of people or get those people to ask other people for money until they trust you. So it's not a conversation about fundraising. It's a conversation about building trust and credibility with your very tiny audience. And by the way, if you think there's 65 families with this disease, there's probably like at least 150. But there's 90 of them who, for privacy reasons, for cultural reasons, right? There's a lot of cultures out there, from other parts of the world, where you do not advertise you have a genetic disease in your family. It's a blemish on the family name. It could affect your other children. It's not something you talk about. So for a variety of reasons, there's people out there who aren't even going to let you know they exist. But if your podcast, if the Cure OGT podcast is out there, they're going to stumble across it, and they're going to start watching it, and they're going to learn what you're doing. So it's kind of the takeaway here is that even though we're in the arena fighting, on top of all the other work we're doing, it's also our job to communicate what's happening, because most people have no idea what this patient advocacy work is about. And most people don't have the energy to even reach out to us. But if we literally give it to them on a podcast platter, you can watch this on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. Here it is. Because once you make that video and upload it, the robots push it out to the world, right? And as long as it's on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, very shareable.
Yeah.
And then as soon as people find it, they can go. I've literally met people who are like, my kid was diagnosed on Friday. I've been listening to your podcast since Monday. I'm on episode 100 and whatever. They're just binging. But that's 10 hours I didn't have to spend on the phone with them.
Totally. Yeah.
So how do you fundraise? You build trust and credibility. The best tool I've got for that is the pod, communicating.
Right.
And also having, I think in the early days, I talked about this in my talk, right? Right now, I'm just like, give me lots of money. I have lots of stuff to fund. Like we are at a different level today. But in the early days, I was like, we are funding this work and we need to fund this work. We need to fund a missense server. We need to fund an iPSC library. We need to fund operating costs for the foundation. That's a tougher sell. But it's true. I mean, honestly, you've probably there's a lot of busy work that has to be done. And for a couple $1,000 a month or less, you can find someone offshore who you can have do all this stuff, do all these social media posts, email everybody, blah, 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 check this, pay this, whatever. Like I have somebody who I spend $2,000 a month on, and they're in the Philippines and they do a ton of work for the foundation. But my point is, figure out what you're fundraising for and then communicate about it relentlessly. You guys already have Give Lively set up, right? I was on your website checking it out. So you have the mechanisms, but it takes time. And then out of nowhere, after hearing nothing from someone for like 2 years, they're going to call you up and be like, I love what you're doing. Here's a check. Right? But I really do think that the answer to fundraising is communication. The next thing I was going to say is, you got to have a conference and you got to have a fundraiser. You've already had a conference. Congratulations. That's a huge step. It took me forever to have the courage to do that. Of course, I also had COVID to deal with. The other thing is, I would maybe with your conference or maybe separately, it is a ton of work, but try to start having a fundraiser, even if in the early years it's tiny, right? And there's two kinds of fundraisers. There's the big fancy gala, ton of work, very expensive. And then there's the peer-to-peer, which you can do with Give Lively, where everybody just organizes a little 5K run in their town. And that's what we do that. We call it Sprint for SynGAP. And a few of those have taken on lives of their own, right? They've become annual events for families. And what I say to every family is, you need to do a fundraiser to raise money for the fund, for SRF, and you need to do a fundraiser to build a local community around your kid, because SynGAP is not life limiting. I don't think OGT is life limiting. Your kids are going to get bigger, they're going to get older, they're going to get weirder. And the sooner you start educating your community about your kid and you start helping people understand this is a disease and this is a thing and they need to help, the better, right? So I would use fundraising as a way to build local community. And then the other thing I would say about negotiating on your last point, and then I'll
Mike, hold on. Before we move on to the next one. So I was really hesitant to even start fundraising for anything for now, because to reach out to people, you have to have a very compelling story, very compelling projects where you want to put those money. And so far, like me personally, I haven't developed a very solid plan, because where I need to even put my own money, right? I'm putting my time, obviously, and so a little bit of money, of course, in some of the work that we're doing. But really, what I'm struggling with is that, like you have a very clear roadmap in your mind. You need to do A, B, C, D, APSC cells, mouse model, and those like SMARTT and things like that. And for that, you definitely need the funds. So I'm trying to figure out the critical path here, so that I would be able to come back to the community, to Elise and to all other people, and say, hey, Elise, I figured it out. This is what I'm suggesting. This is number 1, number 2, number 3 things that we need to do. And we've done the work. We've vetted different options that will allow us to do that. Now we need to just go ahead and start from fundraise. So I guess this is my hesitation. I haven't figured out yet, like the step 1, step 2, those projects which we need to fund.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, and I could comment I've got 25 years of PTA experience, so kind of advocacy and support of things. And yeah, I totally agree, Andre, that you get your best bang for your buck for fundraising if there's a specific goal.
100%. 100%. So pick a specific goal and get to it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you need a scientific roadmap. You know, back to combined brain. I'm just going to interrupt myself because I sound like I'm always promoting combined brain, but I am. You know, there's this mom, Terry Jo Bichelle, if you look her up, and Terry Jo has now an adult son with Angelman, and she did all the work for Angelman. She got her PhD in neuroscience, blah blah blah, and now her kid is on an ASO. Terry Jo does not need a job. You know, she has worked her butt off. She is retired. She should be sitting at home, hanging out with her son, enjoying her life. And for the goodness of her heart, she said, you know, I've learned so much doing all this work, and there's all these small rare disease groups out there who aren't as lucky as Angelman. Let me start Combined Brain to help little groups just like yours find their way through this maze. And let me do things that they can't do by themselves, like start a biobank, for a repository for blood and other samples, and to store iPSCs. And she's done that. And she's got, I'm now on the board of Combined Brain because I love it so much. I support it. We've got like over 125 patient advocacy groups in there because it actually is a useful set of tools. One of the things she does is she has a lot of postdocs, a lot of PhD students. And you can and there's basically a rent a scientist program where you can go to her and be like, I want one of your scientists at whatever dollars per hour. And I want them to work with me to make a scientific roadmap. What do we need to be doing, right? And it's a lot of what we've talked about here, and there'll be some other stuff, and they'll delve into the literature, but the punchline will be, here is the top 3 priorities. And then when you have that document in hand, if you want this level of specificity, you go to the families and you say, here's what we're working on. We're working on an iPSC catalog. We're working on an in silico missense server. We're working on just a grant pool, right? Like at the end of the day, once you raise $100,000, give or take, you can put out a call for proposals. Hey, researchers, we are looking for proposals that will get us closer to a drug.
Yeah.
We do not want to answer basic science questions. We want to get closer to a drug. Send us a proposal. And then you'll learn a lot from those proposals. But until you say, I have $100,000 in hand, write me a proposal, you can't do that. So I think what you say to families is only when every disease has patients who need help. Like the poor me sob stories, not helpful. We need help and we have organized and we've got money, very helpful. Especially under the current regime where the US government is cutting science funding. Like researchers really need money right now. So if you as a patient advocacy group can raise some money and say, hey, we're willing to fund good ideas, you're going to get people's attention.
Totally. Yeah.
So it's worth raising money. Some donors will be like, I'm not giving you a penny until you have a specific idea. Fine. Some donors will be like, you want to help my kid? Here's $10,000. Let me know what you do with it. It's going to vary, right? Yeah. But I wouldn't for a second not fundraise. Because you got to ask, and you got to tell people, my kid's sick. I'm funding basic science. I'm doing research. I'm trying to help this. You need money for that. So I wouldn't hesitate to fundraise. And if the people say, I need specifics, be like, okay, I need $20,000 to write a scientific strategy paper. You want to fund that? Then you'll have your specifics.
Yeah,
it's a conversation.
Makes sense, Mike. Cool. I want to be mindful to our time. 9 minutes left until you have to go. Let's talk about, so anything else here in fundraising. So regarding fundraising, I also felt that the problem and the barrier, Mike, is that we don't have like a playbook. For everyone, it's just the first time in their life. So we need some sort of like a playbook and set of materials that is given to us. Obviously, I'll need to develop it for my community and give it to everyone, right? But I need to look at this playbook so that people just don't think about it. They just think about, okay, I follow step A, B, C, D, and here are the supporting materials that I can use, and it's given to me by Andre. And all I just need is to print, organize, call, and just conduct the event and just provide this landing page that Andre will do for me. And this is lacking for me. I believe that I need to put that together and send it out to all of the people.
I mean, are you talking about just how to do a fundraiser?
Yeah, how to do a fundraiser. Yeah, basically like a playbook for like, hey, if you want to do a gala, this is what you do. If you want to do like a 10K run, this is what you do.
Galas are a ton of work. I mean, you live in Austin, right?
Yeah.
There's a good number of rare disease people in your town.
Yeah.
The short answer to everything, so two comments on what you just said. I was asking for a playbook for the first 5 years. There's no playbook. And the reason there's no playbook is because each of our diseases are different and the state of science is different. And we kind of have to, you have to be really agile in this work, similar to how you would be in a tech company, right? Agile is a very, reactive term. So
Totally.
You need money. You need things to fund. And you need to build the patient community. Those are all equally important. So if you can't figure out fundraising, start the podcast. The technical barrier to entry is low for anyone. Given your day job, like you should be able to start a podcast in 5 minutes. And what you're going to find as soon as you bother to post the first one is you're going to have like 10 more ideas. It just comes. It's a very natural thing. Start building that community. Start finding more patients with your pod, right? That's going to support your fundraising. And then tell your researchers, hey, we're going to raise $100,000 by the end of the year. It's a totally reasonable goal. So we want proposals by January 1st for how you would spend $100,000 to cure OGT.
Yeah.
And have them put it in writing, right? And then, we need a scientist to review those. Don't let the scientist you're going to fund review the things you're in. It's not that complicated. Either put together a committee of other rare leaders, people like me and Nasha and whatever, or go rent a scientist from Terry Jo Bichelle. Like your to-dos out of this are join Combined Brain, figure out how to do a podcast, and survey your researchers and say, if we had $100,000, would you do a proposal, right?
Yeah.
But what you're trying to do is impossibly hard. And the only way to do it is to start and trust that the universe will send you resources as you need them. And the biggest resource that's sitting out there just waiting to stumble across you on a YouTube video is parents who haven't reached out to the foundation because they've been to your website and they're like, this is a nice website, but not much going on. Right.
Yeah.
And guess what? I know a lot of rare disease groups. I know what my group is doing. And I go to my website, and my website, there's a lot of stuff going. It's nothing compared to what's happening behind the scenes. Everyone's website is a year old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really hard to explain to people. Today, this is what's going on, right? Whereas if you just go listen to my last podcast, I'm all over the place for 20 minutes. But you listen to that podcast and you're like, all right, SRF is doing stuff. If you get nothing out of my podcast, we're busy. Right?
Yeah, totally.
And go ahead, Elise.
Actually, what I was going to say is that I still feel totally like a neophyte. I mean, literally, this is, I just kind of joined this group maybe 2 months ago, and they're talking about in science, and I'm not an ignorant person. I'm an engineer by training, and I stepped away from my career 20 some odd years ago. My son's 31.
Yep.
His birthday was last Friday. Anyway, and we just got this OGT diagnosis basically within the past year. So there's a lot that I don't feel like I even understand. And I can't help but thinking that there may be more people out there. So I like the idea of the podcast, first of all. But I think just even getting the information out there that it exists, and maybe just having some of it being educating us that are new to this whole thing.
So Elise, I just looked you up on LinkedIn. Joined GE in 1986, lasted 15 years.
Yeah.
You're pretty smart. There weren't a lot of women joining GE as engineers in 1986.
That is true.
So, I mean, what I would say is you are the standard issue rare disease mom. And you are, look up Terry Jo Bichelle. You and Terry Jo probably have a lot, look at my CSO, Catherine Heldy, her son, Joey, is 20 something. And she stepped away from her scientific career 15 years ago to deal with him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of you out there, and
Mm-hmm.
and you are exactly what this community needs, because having seen your son a moment ago and
Mm-hmm.
seeing you on this call, it feels like your life is relatively stable, all given the realities of a rare disease mom, right? So
Yeah.
unlike many parents who are struggling in these very confusing times, and the younger families, I think, have a lot of more uncertainty maybe they're
Mhm.
facing. Some people are hanging on by a thread, and if you've got a few more inches of thread than they do, I'm not saying I'm not saying any of our lives are easy.
Right.
You have the ability to use the brain that you got, which is obviously just as sharp as it was when you were an engineer at GE, and figure this stuff out. This isn't hard. You don't have to understand the science. This is just basic human dynamics. And if you could navigate GE for 15 years, you can figure out rare disease. And what I would say to anyone who's got the bandwidth is get on a plane and go to a conference. There's a rare disease drug development conference in Boston in soon. There's a combined brain meeting in Nashville also soon. But the Global Genes meeting, if you send me an email, I'll have someone send you a link.
Okay.
Go to that, meet other parents. This is not rocket science, right? This is just how do I put, and part of it is you got to remember, like, you're in this how do I cure OGT thing, and I'll leave you with this. You're actually in this rare disease hellscape / ecosystem, right? Where there's researchers and clinicians and PAGs, and there's PAGs like mine who spend about $1 million a year. And then there's PAGs like Angelman and Dravet and others who have millions and millions of dollars that are fighting for resources. And there's PAGs like Cure OGT that are like, what about this? And then you got to realize you've got a handful of researchers already. That's great. You got clinicians who are like, I've never seen one of your kids. I don't have time for you, blah, blah, blah. And you've got to navigate this space. And you've got to make sure that people know OGT. Oh, I met Elise at a conference. I can call Elise. I know Andre. I've seen Andre's podcast. Andre's doing a Mike lookalike. Andre, there's a lot of people who started podcasts. It works. So, you got to get out there. But
Oh, shoot.
I think we lost Mike.
Yeah.
you're an expert.
Oh, Mike, we lost you for a second.
Oh, I was going to say, Elise is anything but a neophyte. She's raised an OGT patient for 30 years.
Yeah.
She's a community expert. She's a source of more wisdom than you guys should be doing. You should be doing on your podcast, Andre, an interview with Elise. It's a 3-part interview. Tell me about ages 0 to 10. Tell me about 10 to 20. Tell me about 20 to 30. What have you learned? What worked? What didn't? You want to know what episode somebody with a 5-year-old who just got diagnosed with OGT is going to listen to? Every single one of those. And the reason Elise wants to record those episodes is as the families start learning about her, especially if you put this on YouTube, they're all going to call her. What did you do when your kid turned 12? How was puberty? Right?
Yeah.
Puberty's no joke. The way you grow a community is you invite people in. The way you invite people in is you start talking. And then the money comes. Don't worry about if you're not fundraising right now, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Worry about building the community.
Building the community. Yeah.
Someone's got a rich uncle. And as soon as that person is like, oh my God, these are good people. They're just like me. They understand what needs to happen. I'm going to call Uncle Bob.
Makes sense. Makes sense, Mike. Well, we're at time. This is incredibly inspiring as always. Like when I listen to you, Mike, it's please keep on doing what you're doing. You sparkle so much emotions and thoughts and actions. Every time I listen to you, Mike, I really write down those things and look up your notes under those YouTube video, clicks on those links and follow up and just try to see what we can do for Cure OGT. So please keep on doing what you're doing. And what a blessed community with you leading them. So it's a blessing.
Thank you. Well, both of you, please stay in touch. Let me know how I can help. When you apply to Combined Brain, you're going to need a letter of support. Just send me the letter you want me to sign.
Okay.
That's good.
Is that as a whole group, or do we do that as individuals?
No, as a group. So you two will apply to join Combined Brain on behalf as leaders of OGT. And somewhere in there, you're going to need a letter of support from Mike, and just send me a letter that says, I met them. They're nice people. They should join, and I'll sign it.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you so much, Mike. Hey, Andre.
It was a treat.
Thank you.